and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Caira and I make videos all about Chicago, apartments, and Trader Joe's. I am also a leasing agent here in Chicago. I work with Compass and I have helped so many of you find your guys' apartments, but I know that there's a ton of you guys who watch these videos as well who I haven't necessarily worked with. So I wanted to make some videos that are like my tips and tricks for apartment hunting if you're not able to specifically work with me. That being said, my number one tip is to work with a leasing agent. Not every city has them, but Chicago does. And leasing agents are a way that you are able to get help with all of your tours, finding the best buildings. They will be with you on site for your tours, so that way you can make sure you get all of your questions answered. That being said, today's video is all about things that you should be asking when you are doing your tours for your apartment. I'm gonna go through a whole list of things. These might not all be applicable to you, but these are things that I always keep top of mind when I'm touring with my clients to make sure that no piece of information is missed and they have all of the information they need so that way they're able to make the best decision for their next future home. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So first question right off the bat is if you are moving and you need parking for your apartment building, you need to ask them about that right away. Especially right now, and because of COVID, so many people got cars during this time and a lot of these apartment buildings were not set up for it. There are so many buildings in Chicago right now that have their parking on a wait list. And so if you're someone who needs parking right away, that's something you definitely want to ask, as well as the prices for parking. In Chicago, parking is usually about $200 to $300 a month. However, I have seen it as high as $400 and I've seen it as low as like $185 for outdoor, but it does vary. So you want to keep this in mind when doing your own search. There's also unreserved and reserved parking. If you have a electric vehicle, you'll want to ask about that. Just make sure if you're looking to get parking, get all of that information, because it would suck for you to fall in love with a building and then find out that they don't even have parking available. There's a handful of buildings in Chicago that just also don't have parking, and so those wouldn't be good options for you. Next thing you'll want to ask about is pet fees. So obviously this is only applicable if you have a pet, but a lot of buildings will have pet fees. It can kind of go a couple different ways. Some buildings will just charge like an upfront non-refundable deposit. It's not really a deposit if it's non-refundable. That might be like $350 for a dog, $200 for a cat, something like that. Sometimes apartments charge a monthly pet rent where it's like $25 per month per dog, $20 per cat. And some buildings will charge both. You'll have to pay the deposit and the pet rent as well. Also, like 99% of buildings in Chicago do have breed restrictions. So if you have a breed restricted dog, that's something you're definitely going to want to look into too. And then of course, if your dog is a registered emotional support animal, you do not have to pay any fees. And even if a building does not allow pets, you are allowed to live in there. So if you are someone who has an ESA, that works well for you. I also like to point out, if you have a pet, you'll always want to ask about pet amenities. So like, do they have a dog run? Is there a dog spa for you to be able to wash your dog in? Those are things that are super helpful. I love having a dog run in a building because when it's dark at 4:30 in the afternoon in the dead of winter, I don't have to take my dog to the street at night. Next one is utilities. Buildings are usually really good about going over their utilities, but it's something that you'll want to make sure you fully understand. Most buildings in Chicago do a utility package. Those can be anywhere from like $85 to $150 depending on what it is. And typically it includes water, sewer, trash, gas, heat, AC. Sometimes it includes internet, but not always. That's always one that I like to point out because internet packages typically start about $50 a month, so that can really jack it up. And it will never include your electric. Electric you'll set up with ComEd. That is the electric provider for all of Chicago. And it's super easy, but you'll want to know a full understanding on what their utility situation is. Some buildings don't do a package and they just price you out by usage. Most of the times the buildings will be like, we can't really give you estimates on that, but I would still ask because if they give you any sort of information along those lines of what that would look like, that's really helpful. I will say for most buildings though, it is typically pretty comparable to what you would pay for a package. Next one is financial qualification. So if you are wanting to move forward with a building and you're wanting to put in your application, you're gonna need to know, what do I need to prove to be able to financially qualify? For most buildings, it is 2.5 to 3 times the monthly rent before any concessions. I've gone over this little scenario before, but I will do it again right here just because I think it's really helpful. Let's say you're looking at an apartment and it is $2,000 a month plus 1 month free on a 12-month lease. That means that your net amount, so your net effective of what you're paying, is actually $1,833, but your lease is going to say that $2,000 a month. You're just not going to pay for that 1 month. When you're financially qualifying, you're going to be going off of that $2,000 amount. So if a building requires 3 times the monthly rent for financial qualification, you're gonna need to make $6,000 a month to afford a $2,000 apartment. But that is your gross income. So that's before any taxes and before your 401k gets pulled out, any of those things. That's just based off of your gross. It does vary building to building. I will say 2.5 to 3 is by far the most common, so you'll want to know about that. And then also, if you have a history of bad credit, you'll also want to know what their credit qualifications are before you put in that application too. These are really important because you do pay to put in an application. It's going to be like roughly a $50 application fee and then like a $450 admin fee. Usually if you're denied, that $450 will go back to you, but that $50 won't. So you'll want to get this information to make sure, am I even in a spot to be able to financially qualify for this apartment? Next one is look and lease specials. I always ask about these. It kind of blows my mind that sometimes on-site agents won't tell you what the look and lease specials are when like really that's an important piece of information. So what a look and lease special is typically it means if you're touring, a building will say if you apply within 24 to 48 hours, they will credit you back that $450 admin fee. That's great because that just then goes towards your rent versus paying an extra $450 for no reason. I always tell my clients you'll want to be like fully prepared to be able to put in an application after touring so that way you can take advantage of that. Otherwise that money is just kind of lost. Not every single building does them, but I would say most do, and it's very important to make sure you have that information. Another thing I always check on when I'm touring with my clients is which way that unit is facing. For quick reference, if you are south facing, you will get the most direct sunlight throughout the entire day. North facing, you still get a lot of light, but you won't get as much direct sun in. East facing, you will be getting all of the sunrises and a lot more morning light. And then west facing, you'll be getting sunsets and a lot of the evening light. So if that is something that matters to you, you'll definitely want to check in on which direction the apartments you're touring are facing. Next is how trash is handled. I will say I think like 95% of buildings in Chicago have trash chutes on every floor, so that's super easy. But you could also check about recycling. Some buildings have recycling chutes, so that way you're still just dropping it down. Some buildings you have to take your recycling down to the lobby. There might be a dumpster or something, so you have to handle it yourself. Some buildings will do valet trash where they come around and collect it from in front of your door. All sorts of different scenarios. Trash chutes are pretty common. Everything else, you're kind of going to want to know what that looks like and make sure that your building gives you that information. Also, something that clients have asked me a lot is if you live right by the trash chute, is that annoying and can you hear it? And I will say I've never heard of anybody complain about noise from a trash chute. I've just never heard of it. Next one is how maintenance is handled. This, you'll be pretty in the clear as far as going for a professionally managed building. Most of them have on-site 24-hour maintenance. A lot of buildings have a maintenance engineer who actually lives in the building in case there's any emergencies. What you can kind of expect is that if there is anything that you need fixed, but it's not urgent, you should be able to get that fixed within 48 hours, but they will have on-call maintenance in case there is an emergency that needs to be fixed right away. Just double check on this. Some of the smaller buildings might not have somebody for 24 hours. I think it's just a good thing to note in case you ever were in a situation with an emergency. Okay, this next one's important and I feel like applies just about anywhere you go, so pay attention. Heating and cooling. Chicago specifically does these things called a 2-pipe versus a 4-pipe system. If you are working with either of those, you are going to want to know. What it means is if it's a 2-pipe system, that means that your building will automatically switch and you'll only have access to either heat or AC depending on the time of year. It's usually done based on the temperature outside, so if it drops below a certain temp, your system will automatically switch into heat mode and you cannot run the AC even if you wanted to. And then if it's warmer than a certain temperature, it automatically switches back to AC. I've lived in 2-pipe system buildings basically forever, and I will say I have had no issues with them. I think the 2-pipe works totally fine. If it's too hot, I can always open a window. We sleep with a fan on. I don't know. I've never had any issues, but it is something to keep in mind. Some buildings are on a 4-pipe system, so you're able to control it no matter what time of year is and what temperature it is outside. And some buildings also have window AC units. You're going to want to check on those, especially because a lot of window AC units are attached to your electricity bill. And so if they are, your electricity bill will likely be a lot higher than if it is not a window unit. Next one, if you are someone who is a 5 a.m. gym rat or a 3 a.m. gym rat, or you just happen to want to go and use the common areas in the middle of the night for whatever reason, you're going to want to check on the hours of your amenities. I've seen a lot of clients run into issues where their buildings have made it so that way their gym doesn't open up until 8 a.m. and a lot of people typically go to the gym before 8 a.m. So you're going to want to know, is the gym 24 hours? If it's not 24 hours, what are the hours that I am able to access it? I don't really see people running into these issues when it comes to any of the other common spaces. I don't feel like people really care. But if your gym's not 24 hours, you're probably going to want to know what hours you can't be there. Another good one to know is guest suites and guest parking. I typically always bring this up when I have clients who are moving from out of state because they'll usually have friends and family come visit, especially if they're looking at a smaller apartment, so like studios or maybe 1-beds that are just a little bit tight, and they'll have family come and they won't necessarily want them to stay in their unit. Guest suites are a great option. If you don't know what a guest suite is, it's that Some buildings will have an apartment unit that they've fully furnished and fully stocked that they can rent out for short-term rentals. So I'm not talking short-term like a month. You could, it would just be really expensive, but more so like you can rent a couple nights at the guest suite versus having your friends and family go stay in a hotel. Number one, they're usually quite a bit cheaper. I've seen them go from like $150 to like $280 a night, which for Chicago hotels is a pretty dang good price. But also, instead of staying in a hotel where you have just like your bedroom and bathroom, it's a full apartment. So it will have a kitchen and washer and dryer and everything, which a lot of people really like. Guest suites are really good to note if you are planning on having a lot of people come to town. Also, guest parking, I'd say that one's kind of a hit or miss if buildings allow it or have it. If not, I'm sure there's places in the area that they could park, but always good to keep in mind in case that's something that you'll need. All right, and last thing I want to point out, this one I feel like is a lot more applicable to everybody after 2020, but this would be food delivery. How is food delivery handled? I have an Uber Eats pass that I use decently often. I know so many people do in the city. There's so many food deliveries, and you're gonna want to find out, will your building allow food deliveries to go up to your apartment and like knock on your door, or does it have to get left in the lobby and you come and pick it up from down there? Even if they do allow them to the door, you can always set it so that way it's left in the lobby if you don't want people coming up to your floor. But if you prefer that, then you should definitely ask and see, would a food delivery person be able to come to your door, or do you have to go down? I know I am super lazy, and when it comes to food delivery, if I'm ordering something in, please do not make me put on shoes to go down to my lobby. Please hand it to me while I stand here in my sweatpants and braless. I would have a shirt on, obviously. Anyways, but I wouldn't want to go to my lobby. So that's something that I keep in mind. If that's something that's really important to you, definitely ask that one when you're touring as well. All right, guys, those were all of my questions of things that popped into mind of what I thought was really important to ask while you're touring for your apartments. That being said, again, I am a leasing agent. I can help you, and I can help you find your next apartment and make sure that all of these questions are asked so you don't have to come into your tours with a notebook and make sure you get everything taken care of. That is literally my job, and that's what I do. But if you are moving somewhere else, if you just hate me and don't want to work with me, these are really great questions to ask. So make sure to keep these in mind when you're touring your apartments. If you are looking for an apartment, I will have my Jot form link down in the description box. That one you can fill out and you will immediately get in touch with myself and my team, and we would love to help you. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, hit that big red subscribe button. I post a video every 3 days. Comment down below if you have any other questions that you think that people should ask. I'd love to be able to kind of just share the wealth, grow the list here. But I will be having a couple other videos that are like more apartment centric coming out like this. So keep an eye out for those, and I hope they helped. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.